building and go through a worship service and say, it just feels right. It feels right in here. Others might say, I know in my heart that this is true. But we can't make our decisions based on feelings. And Jesus said to him, if anyone loves me, he will keep my word. And my Father will love him, and we will come to him and make our home with him. He who does not love me does not keep my words. And the word which you hear is not of mine, but the Father's who sent me. This is a test that Jesus gives us. He lets us know if we love him or not. This is how we should know if we love Jesus or not. Not by feelings, but do we keep his word?
Believing in Christ and then actually believing Christ and what he says are two different things. And so it's one thing to believe in him, to actually believe what he says and what it is that he teaches us is a different thing. And to really understand who Christ is and to really believe that Christ does exist, it's hard to do that without following what he says.
Jesus said in Matthew 28:18, all authority has been given to me in heaven and on earth. So Jesus is the authority. This is how we should make religious decisions, based on the authority. Jesus' authority.
So you might sum it up. Christ is always the answer. What's going to stand in the judgment day to judge us is the word of Christ, as a matter of fact. In John 12:48, he who rejects me and does not receive my word has one who will judge him. The word that I have spoken will judge him in the last day.
And it's not about being perfect and keeping everything perfect and being fanatical, but it's all about effort. It's almost like a father and a son. The father wants to see the son trying to please him, just trying to be good. And the father's just happy that he's trying, whether he falls or not.
There's probably a ton of people that want to go to church or want to be a part of a church. But as that chart you just had showed, how would you decide which church you're going to go to? How would you just looking at that there, I thought I knew most of the denominations that were out there, and I was just overwhelmingly proven wrong that there's denominations of Christianity that I'd never even heard of before that just keep going deeper and deeper into different denominations and different sub-denominations and branches off of those sub-denominations, and it's just deciding, people who decide how they want to worship is the creation for all that stuff. It's, how you're supposed to worship is in here.
So then that brings us back. So then how do you pick a church? Do you just, even in our town, there's 20 different churches. So do you just start going and hope for the best? Oh, hey, this one actually says stuff that's in the Bible.
Right. No, how would you, if you were to give advice to somebody who's picking out a new church, somebody who wants to go,
like us.
Like I said, I used the phrase church shopping. I don't necessarily like to mix the word church and shopping together, but that's basically what has to be done, I think. Is there any other way to go out and find a good church that you're gonna know is the right church? Without trying and failing countless
without
times
getting led astray.
Over again.
Yeah.
Because you're going to go to a church, and the minute everybody in the church, you're going to go to any church. You could walk into any church right now on a Sunday morning at 9:30 in the morning, and everybody in that church will tell you that church is the right church to be in.
Right.
And the next Sunday morning, you go to a different church, they'll tell you the same thing. And you could go to a different church every Sunday, and everyone in that church will tell you that church is the right church to be in.
Right.
And that makes me not even want to. It's like, no, I'm cool.
It's an overwhelming.
It's overwhelming.
Thought.
It just
yes.
I personally feel like I would have a better relationship with God where I'm sitting at home reading my Bible on my couch by myself or with Holly than I would sitting with a bunch of people who I honestly feel aren't taking it seriously or don't necessarily really have the Spirit. Sunday Christians, yeah, like the weekend warriors, the weekend Bible warriors, and there are just so many of them out there that they're out getting plastered Saturday night that you'll probably see in church on Sunday morning, and there's just too many. It's too much almost when it really is this simple. There's just too many other things being offered, to people coming to a church. Like you put before, the fellowship with a friend, they offer daycare, my kids are comfortable here, or it's right across the street, or right over my backyard fence, or whatever the case may be. That what makes any church a right church?
Right.
And that's I think that is the hard part. I mean, like I said before, there's probably
It's probably
countless
an
people
impossible question to answer.
that
too.
want to go to church. There's people that don't know what church is the right church to go to.
Right. Yeah, I mean,
So how do you pick a church?
great question. I mean, you're right. People don't know. I mean, just look at that chart. I mean, what do? Throw a dart at one? You know?
I got snake handlers again.
Additional study we're going to do after this. We're going to be talking about the characteristics of the church, the distinctive nature of the early church, the first New Testament church. But what we want to do is we want to read in here. We want to read about the church. Say, for example, the church at Ephesus. We can read about how they're structured, you know, how they had elders, how they had preachers, how they worshipped, how they broke bread, and how often.
And that was the first church?
Right.
Okay.
When I say the first church, I mean the church that Jesus built. There were multiple congregations, like the church at Colossae, church at Rome, church at Ephesus, church at Philippi. So these books, like the church at Philippi, Paul writes it to the church. It's the book of Philippians. It's actually a letter that Paul wrote to the church at Philippi. So we can actually read about this very first church and read all the little characteristics and how they did things. And then when we come to today's churches, we say, hey, where'd that come from? How did they get that? Church at Philippi wasn't doing that. Why are they doing it? So that's how it's an in-depth study, but absolutely it's a very, very important question to ask is how do we choose a church?
So then, okay, so all of these books here are churches, or
Right.
or
Yes, that's
the Galatians.
that's the church at Galatia.
Or Corinth, or
Right.
Okay.
yeah.
I didn't know that.
They're letters. These are just historical documents. They're letters that were written that mostly Paul wrote to churches.
So we can read these books of the Bible and learn what a church is supposed to be, and then try to find one that's
Right.
the closest.
Now, and also too, we have to remember when we're doing this. For example, the church at Corinth had a lot of problems, and Paul was correcting them. So we don't want to. Oh, the church at Corinth was doing this, so we're going to do it. We have to recognize and take it in context, like, hey, they're being corrected. Paul's saying they're doing it wrong. So we don't want to make the same mistakes they were. But we can read about how he was correcting them.
Okay. That is a very helpful tip. I think that will help us in choosing a church.
I know what my car is. I know the make and model, and I know the license plate number, and if it were parked in the parking lot at Kmart, and I said to someone, will you go, here are the keys, will you go and bring my car up here to the front, and here's the description. Well, the person would go out and follow the description that I gave, and sooner or later will come across my car, and he'll say, this is it. It matches the description that was given. Well, what men need to do is go back to the scriptures and see what the church was that Jesus built. And we read about it in the New Testament. And it is fully laid out in the scriptures as to its organization, as to what it takes to become a member, as to its mission and how it worshiped. All of these things are clearly spelled out in the scriptures. So we want to go to the scriptures, first of all, and see what the church is. And then we can look out there and see if it exists anywhere. If it doesn't, then we ought to start it in our community.